as a quick introduction, InMobi enables consumers to discover new products and services by providing contextual and curated recommendations on mobile devices. At InMobi, we regularly host a series of events, meetups, webinars across the globe to share best practices and learnings. In today's webinar titled Boost Retention on Mobile and Keep Users Coming Back for More, we are partnering with AppsFlyer, a market leader in mobile advertising, attribution, and analytics. Their goal is to enable marketers to pinpoint their targeting, optimize their ad spend, and boost their ROI. So moving on to today's webinar, it is well known that more than half of mobile app users today lose interest or uninstall within a week. In such a transient environment, the onus is on the app developer to ensure that active users continue to engage and dormant users re-engage with the app. But what steps do you need to take to achieve this? We will be talking exactly about this in today's webinar. So let me go ahead and introduce today's speakers to you. We have Shani Rosenfelder and Mansi Jain. So Shani is the content marketing lead at AppsFlyer. He has over 10 years of experience in key content and marketing roles across a variety of leading online and mobile companies and startups. And Mansi is the director of remarketing at InMobi. So without any further delay, over to Shani and later to Mansi. Just give us a moment as I change the presenter to Shani. He's in a different location.
Hi everyone, it's great to be here. So these are definitely exciting times to be in app marketing, especially in India, which is enjoying such tremendous growth. So before we talk retention, I'll tell you a little bit about AppsFlyer. So we are the market leader globally, the market leader in mobile attribution and marketing analytics. We've also seen some tremendous growth in the past year or two, and we now measure more than 250 billion mobile actions globally every month. India is definitely one of our top markets. We've also seen some great numbers in India. Over the past year, we've more than doubled our traffic. Our staff in India currently has 8 people. We have 8 people on staff, and by the end of the year, we expect to have 12. This includes all customer-facing departments like account management, support, partner development, sales. We have over 300 great customers in India, including some top apps like Weibo and Paytm, Airtel, Swiggy, and many others. In short, I could say, we are the attribution authority globally and in India as well. Okay, so let's get started. We're here, obviously, to talk about retention. So the way I see app marketing today, the main challenge, basically it's like a crowded road in Mumbai, which is what we see in this picture. There's no room to breathe. It's all jam-packed. And in the app stores, we see the same situation. We see that the app stores are completely flooded. We have over 2 million apps in both Google Play and the App Store, the iOS App Store. So what does this mean? Well, it means that every app has dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of competitors. So at the end of the day, if an app is not exactly what a user is expecting or what he needs, that user will just look elsewhere. It's as simple as that. Let's look at data from Southeast Asia, from Deloitte. And here we can see that installs numbers are dropping. And clearly we see that we have 32% of users download not only 1 to 2 apps every month. A further 39% download 3 to 5. So at the end of the day, we have over 70% of users download less than 5 apps a month. Usage, however, is skyrocketing. According to App Annie, we have time spent in app in India since Q1 2014 up by more than 2x. But, and honestly, this is a big but, this is only true for a handful of apps. Basically, we have almost half of time spent in apps that's done in communication apps, in top communication apps like WhatsApp Messenger, Truecaller, etc. So the bottom line is we have more time spent in app by far, but this is only true for a limited number of apps. For the rest of the apps, it's definitely an uphill battle. This is true especially for Android. We looked at our own retention data, the AppsFlyer, from the AppsFlyer database, looking at installs from organic and non-organic sources. Overall, about 200 million plus installs. And just for to put things in perspective, we define retention as, for a given date, we look at the number of unique users active on a specific day since the install day, divided by the number of users who launched the app for the first time during the date range. So what do we see in this graph? Well, we see the communication vertical, unlike the previous apps that we saw that enjoy such high usage. Here, the situation is a lot tougher. So on the first day, we have about 1/3 of users retained. In the second day, about 10%, and after a week, about 10%, and a month after an install, only about 3%, 4% of users continue using the app. For gaming, situation is not much better. In fact, it's even worse. On day 30, we have 2.1% on Android and just over 5% on iOS. Why is this? Well, there's a lot of incentivized, what we call rewarded advertising in gaming, a lot more than other verticals. So users install an app only because they're offered some sort of reward to do it. So there's not a lot of intent here. So it's pretty clear why users end up not using an app that they've downloaded with incentivized advertising. Also, games have a limited shelf life. If you come to think about it, most gamers lose interest in games. It's not something that goes on forever, only for a very, very, very small number of apps this is true. Lastly, in games, especially in gaming apps, there's practically no brand affinity. I mean, there's no real connection to brands. Users, when the mindset of a user who downloads a game is usually, okay, let's see this game, looks okay, I'll check it out, I'll install it. If I don't like it, I just won't use it, or I'll uninstall it. There's not much of a thought process that goes into it. For shopping apps, the situation is a little bit better, as we can see. We have about almost 9% on iOS on day 30, and now 6% of users retained after 30 days in Android. This is probably because for shopping, there's a much higher brand connection from past experiences in web and even actual brick and mortar stores. There's more of a relationship between consumers and brands. Plus, unlike gaming, of course, we need to remember that shopping never ends. For travel apps, and this data does not include transportation, the transportation vertical, we see what we see here is definitely a seasonal usage. We see that users are not active on after 30 days, or vast majority of them. This is probably because users, when they download apps before they travel to research a vacation, perhaps a flight, to book a flight, to book an hotel, and when that's done, the app ends its role. There's no use for it anymore, and vast majority of users obviously do not travel that often. So that explains the low retention rate here for the travel vertical. So overall, what we see is that iOS has much higher quality users and much higher retention. India is no exception. We see this globally. Why is this? This is mainly because the type of the iOS device. The iOS device, mainly the iPhone, is a high-end device, whereas Android is highly fragmented, and there are dozens and even hundreds of different devices out there. So if you look at the average device, not the high-end device, the average device simply does not offer a user experience like the iPhone. And this leads to less usage. Also on Android, there's a lot more use of incentivized advertising, which explains the lower rate. To make matters worse, users uninstall apps a lot. We've just released a new uninstall study that found that in India, the uninstall rate overall was almost 3 out of 10 users. Almost 3 out of every 10 installs ended up being uninstalled after about a month. If you look at non-organic data, that number jumped to 35%. So why do users uninstall apps? Well, there are many reasons, but most important, I'd say, are limited storage space, poor device performance, slow load apps, the pages don't load properly, the app crashes, and unmet expectations. Simply the app promised to do something or deliver some sort of an experience or a function, and it did not meet that expectation. So uninstall is a really strong signal of discontent. So it's really important to measure it. If you measure uninstalls, it will be able to inform your user acquisition activities, your re-engagement activities, and your product strategy and your app, the app itself. It'll help you predict user lifetime value, and it'll improve your ASO because the app stores increasingly use quality metrics to determine an app's ranking, and uninstall is definitely one of them. So if you look at recent data that we released on uninstalls, we see that India is slightly lower than slightly lower than the global average. So on the one hand, we have the average Android phone in India probably has low storage space and likely performance and usability issues, which does lead to uninstalls, the apps being uninstalled. And it is, on the other hand, India is a lot more of I'd say a mobile-first country. So the act of uninstalling an app that can explain why it is not as high as, say, Latin America or Russia, where that rate is much, much higher. And it's similar to Southeast Asia, where the definitely nations there are also mobile first. So this data and data you've seen on retention is from the two recent reports that we've released. If you want to see the full reports, there's a lot more data there. You can go to appsflyer.com/library, and you see the top two reports up there that you can look at. Okay, so I must say this was a grim start for app marketing, but let's now talk about the good news. So the good news is that you can keep calm, and when you start measuring and you measure properly, results will follow. So the way I see it, there is a gap in perception. I think mobile is the most measurable ecosystem ever created, and some think that this is not true, that this is a challenge. But honestly, if you look at other ecosystems, I mean, offline is hardly measurable. The web, we have the crumbling cookie, whose average lifespan is a few weeks at most. Mobile, on the other hand, has several very, very good methods to use. We have ID matching, like IDFA and iOS and GIA and Google Advertising ID, and Google, which are very, very accurate identifiers. We have the Google Play Refer, which is highly accurate. And there's also fingerprinting as a fallback mechanism, which is very accurate in the short term. But this is okay because, again, in any case, most click to install time is usually immediate. So the bottom line is that mobile measurement is not a challenge. It is actually the solution. The real challenge, in my opinion, is cross-device, is omni-channel tracking. That's the challenge, okay? But that's a topic for another webinar. So what do you need to measure to be in the ideal position to optimize retention? First things first, you need to understand the Titanic shift that's happening in the ecosystem. So we've had the first wave of app marketing was the acquisition wave, okay? The installs, get me as many installs as possible. That was the goal. And this wave is over, okay? It's broken. The wave is no longer, you cannot ride this wave successfully anymore. We are now in the midst of the second wave, the engagement post-install wave, where successful marketers measure, app marketers measure opens, purchases, revenue, LTV, things that are happening in app. This app is really at its peak, and there's only more to go. The third wave is the ROI wave. This wave is starting to pick up steam. It's still used by the savviest marketers, but I have no doubt that this wave will continue to grow because ultimately this is what marketers need to measure, their ROI. Okay, so we talked about retention, looked at uninstall data. So here we basically provided an example where we look at retention data and looked at the table from our dashboard. And what we see here is that we have a few media sources that are performing well and a few that aren't performing as well. So top media sources obviously performing well. The second and third media sources are performing well as well, but the fourth media source, as we can see, it's not performing as well. So what can we do in this situation? Well, the best thing to do is to dive deep into retention data. So that means looking at breaking down by media source, breaking down by geo, breaking down by campaign, whatever is possible to break down the data. The deeper you go, the more insights you will have. So what we've done here in this example is pretty much we looked at the fourth media source, the one that did not perform as well, and we broke the data down into geo. So in here we clearly can see that the first country at the top is to blame. So the best course of action here is just simply to either remove this geo altogether, or to reduce its budget and perhaps keep it on kind of like a low burner and see if it performs well, and then again increase its budget. Retention is really important because it tells us how many users keep using your app, and this is a unique number. But the power combo, the best way to look at retention, the best way to improve engagement is by using what we call cohort reports. And cohort reports tell us how users are using your app. So if you have to define what a cohort is basically, I mean, this is a simplified definition, but it's a group of users with common characteristics, that they're all treated as a group. A cohort report enables advertisers to view and compare all kinds of in-app events over different time frames. For example, an advertiser can create different cohorts according to different geos and then compare the average number of sessions, for example, per user for each cohort over say the first 30 days of each user's activity. So what that means is that cohort is a really good indication of change over time. It tells us about the quality of the average customer and whether it's increasing or decreasing over time. So let's look at the following example of a cohort report. What we can see here is, in this case, we're looking at the average sessions per user. After all, this webinar is focused on retention. And on the x-axis, we see the time. So these are media sources. Each line here represents a media source. So if you look at the orange line, we see that this media source is performing very well. It's showing no signs of fatigue. So it would pretty much make sense to increase its budget and maximize its potential. The blue line starts off really strong, but as we can see, pretty much around day 14, the engagement starts to drop a little bit. The number of sessions start to drop. So in this scenario, it makes sense that when we use this media source by day 14 for users that have reached this day 14, it makes sense to start re-engagement or retargeting, try to keep them engaged, and keep that curve going up. The gray line or the gray or green line, we see very modest growth. It's still performing okay, but not very well. It doesn't make sense to put a lot of money into this media source, but it still pays off to see what this media source can do over time. And the red line represents a media source that is not performing very well at all. We see no engagement pretty much over time, any increase in engagement, so this media source, it doesn't really pay to continue using it. Okay, another very important aspect of the method in which you can improve retention has to do with defining in-app events for funnel optimization. So when you look at, for example, these two examples, two categories, the shopping category and the gaming category, we see typical funnels. So each of these events can be measured. Okay, the category visit, a product visit, add to cart, registration, purchase, second purchase, uninstall. And in gaming, for example, tutorial completion, Facebook registration, a level pass achievement, etc., etc. Now, this is very important because it can tell you where users are at in each stage of the funnel. And this is important on a user level because if you know that a user is at a certain level, let's say level passed, okay, you can communicate with that user in a way that's much more relevant to that user's stage in the funnel. If that user perhaps stopped using your app for some reason or has gone dormant for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you know at which level that user is, where he stopped, and you can try to entice him to come back into the app by offering some sort of discount or incentive. So, for example, if you see that a user is stuck on level past, maybe that level 25, say, is just too hard for that user to pass. So what you can do is just offer some sort of, let's say, free coins that can help him get the best weapon and pass that level. On an aggregated level, this data is very important because it enables us to see if we group all these events together, if we see a significant drop in the funnel at any point in the process, then this probably means that there's something wrong with the product, with the app. Maybe a level is too hard, an achievement is too hard, a registration process is not seamless enough. So this gives us very important indications about retention. We looked at data, our data from India, just to try to give you some sort of view on the relationship between an install and in-app activity. Okay, this is not a pure funnel, but basically what we found is that if we look at the event level and not the user level, our data has found that for India, for shopping apps, one install, you can expect to get about 9 content views, so product or category views, about 1 add to cart event, 0.27 registration events, and 0.09 purchase events. So that means for about 10 installs, you can expect from 10 installs, you can expect to get a single purchase event. For gaming, we found that 1 install can generate approximately 0.67 tutorial completion events, 0.37 registration events, and 0.08 in-app purchase events, which is very similar to shopping. So once again, before previously I talked about the importance of granular, going deep into the data and diving and getting as many insights as you can. And this is true for in-app events as well. So instead of just looking at a basic in-app event, we want to know a lot. We can know a lot more about it. For example, here we see the add to cart event, and there's no reason why we cannot add multiple parameters to this event and know, for example, content type, content ID, the price, the currency. Does the customer does the customer have a user ID or not? What's the date? So this tells us not only that an event took place, it tells us who did the event, when, where, what was of interest, for how much, how often, etc., etc. With this data, there's just so much more that you can do. Specifically for retention, as you want to focus here, when you measure rich in-app events, you can take your acquisition to another level. How does this work? Well, for example, you can by measuring in-app events and by aggregating the data and analyzing the data, perhaps a gaming developer has found that the best users, the users that are most active in his app, are users who have A, completed the tutorial, B, passed level 10, unlocked achievement 1, and registered through Facebook. So we call this segment the Loyalists. Now, when you know that this is your segment, you can go back to the networks, the media sources that found, that delivered, that acquired those users, and you can optimize accordingly. So for example, you found that network number 3 delivered a volume of Loyalists, and campaign 22 did the same, and publisher 11. So this is the kind of granularity and detail that you can find in measurement by using rich in-app events, and this can really change your acquisition budgets. What it can also do is you can look at this data and understand what characteristics, what best characterizes these types of users. When you know what characterizes these types of users, you can use this data to run lookalike targeting to find more users that are loyalists. Okay, another important thing, of course, for rich and app events is to use it for smart re-engagement. So not only acquisition, but obviously re-engagement. So here, what we have is that by using rich and app events, we are able to determine that a segment, let's call them cart abandoners, this segment, a specific segment, has looked at electronics products. These products were priced above $100, and they were all existing customers. So you can take this information and take all these users that you have that fit this criteria, that the app that performed these actions in app, and you know this because you measured it, and then run retargeting campaigns or email campaign or push campaign for these users. Now this is important on two levels. First, it boosts the relevancy of the creative. Okay, so if you know that the creative is specific to the segment or specific to the user, it just is very simple. The engagement is much higher. Okay, this resonates with the user. It's not just a generalized message. Second, it enables you to look at the best re-engagement sources. So you know that retargeting network 4 delivered the best users, or email campaign 7, or push campaign 2, publisher 9, etc. Okay, last but not least, an important part of improving retention has to do with deep linking. Now, deep linking, for those of you who don't know, is kind of like the interstate highway of the mobile device. So there are different, the mobile web, mobile apps are pretty much, they're disconnected in a way. They're not, the transition between them is anything but seamless. The problem is that users kind of like go back and forth. Yeah, I mean, most users spend time in app, but the mobile web is still very strong. The problem is, and you've probably encountered this many times, I know I have, is that you found yourself probably clicking on an ad or a promotion, and then you find yourself in the App Store, even though you have the app installed. So that is really annoying. Or when you click on a specific promotion for a specific app, even if you have the app or not. For example, you click on a interstitial that says the New York hotels, you can get New York hotels for up to 70% off. You expect that when you click on that button, you get to the right page. If you get to the home page of the app, that doesn't help you. So what do you do from there? So if the user experience is not perfect, if there's any friction, most chances is, the users are just going to leave. They're just going to say, okay, you know what, I'm not going to do this now. I'm just going to use another app. And we are all users, and this is how we behave. And it doesn't matter if you have the app or not. The process of deep linking and deferred deep linking will just offer the best user experience that is possible. The data is presented, the specific data is presented by technology that we call get conversion data. Basically, this means that the queried data the conversion data, is queried from the attribution provider. So then the app knows which page to show when the app opens. This is a very important, because this conversion data it really opens the door to personalization. So you can customize the user experience based on all the information that's on the tracking link. You don't need a promo code. And this kind of experience is one of the key reasons that can drive continued and satisfied users. Okay, so last topic I will talk about today has to do with the connection and partnership that media sources have with attribution providers. So the kind of like relationship that InMobi has with AppsFlyer. Data is passed between these partners through what we call Postback. Now, there are two types of Postbacks, and this is the information that's important for advertisers to understand. The install Postback is when we, as a measurement company, we recognize that a non-organic install has taken place. Then a Postback with attribution data is sent to the integrated media source, and this happens in real time. And this is important because what this does is, at first, it aligns the data between the media source and the advertiser. So basically, what you see on the dashboard, for example, on the AppsFlyer dashboard, is the same data that InMobi has. okay? And this also enables the media source to optimize based on volume of installs, okay? Volume. This is about volume, and because we're only talking about the install postback. Another very important postback, and this is especially important for engagement and retention, is the in-app event postback. So in-app event postbacks are have to be implemented by the advertiser via in the attribution provider's SDK. Once that happens, the attribution provider can record these events as they happen. So users are performing all sorts of in-app events at a very granular level, as we discussed earlier. And the attribution provider records all this data. Now, what the attribution provider does, it enables the advertiser to send all this data, all this in-app event data, to the media source in real time. Now, I've put this in asterisks and I've highlighted this in bold because I want to emphasize this point. This is about the advertiser's choice. The advertiser has to choose. It's the advertiser's data. Okay, the advertiser chooses whether he or she want to pass the app open event data to the media source. And for an AppsFlyer, for example, this is predefined, so you don't have to configure this in the SDK, or pass any other relevant events that happened in app to the media source, whether standard, rich, whatever is recorded. This is not a must, but we highly recommend that advertisers do this. We always advocate for this because it enables the media source to optimize for quality. So previously we talked about quantity, about volume, and now this enables quality. It also enables the media source to run personalized retargeting campaigns. So basically the media source knows which users performed which actions, and then run retargeting for these users based on that data. It also enables the media sources, if the advertiser chooses to do so, to send all the in-app event data, all of it, the organic, the non-organic, to the media source. And what this does mainly is that it enables advertisers to really scale their retargeting campaigns. So retargeting is scale is an issue in retargeting, and once we can get data from all the media sources, that list of potential retargeting users is can be much larger. Okay, so how can you leverage mobile measurement? Now I'd like to pass this on to Mansi, and I hope it's been informative. And again, I apologize for the sound issues in the beginning. Go ahead, Mansi.
So this is Mansi this site, and thanks a lot everyone for joining us today afternoon. So to begin with, about AppsFlyer. So AppsFlyer, as you all know, is one of the leading mobile, one of the market leaders in mobile attribution and marketing analytics. They have a lot of client base in India and Southeast Asia, and we have seen a lot of leading developers adopting AppsFlyer as their mobile marketing partner. I think the key challenge that we face in today's world is the in the mobile app first world. The key challenge that we are facing is the explosion of apps where there's absolutely no room to breathe. We almost have 2.2 million apps on the Android App Store and almost 2 million on iOS App Store. So as you see, the app stores are completely flooded, and they're absolutely fragmented right now. One of the key things that we saw over the last 2 years is that a lot of app developers were working towards getting a lot of new users, but we are seeing that the average number of installs per user is declining over the last 2 years. Almost 32% of the users only have 1 to 2 apps on their phone, while only 12% of the users have more than 10 apps on their phone. Particularly in markets like India, where data is a problem, we see that data and space is a problem. We see that users typically don't have more than 3 to 4 apps on an average on their mobile phone. And we also see that out of the apps that the users have on their phone, only a handful of apps are the ones that users are using on a regular basis. For example, particularly if we look at communication apps, those are the few apps where users are engaging with them on a daily basis, and they keep coming back to them. For the rest of the verticals, it is actually a battle. A lot of data that we have seen actually shows that the retention by different platform on day one for communication vertical, almost 30% of the users after installing the app, they come back to engage with the app. On day 2, 5.5%. While if till day 30, we see only 2.7% of the users coming back to their app and re-engaging again with their app on Android, while the engagement is higher on iOS platform. On the other hand, if we look at gaming as a vertical, the pattern follows here also. 30% of the users on day one after installing the app actually opens the app and engages with them, while by day 30, we see only 2% of the users on Android actually re-engaging with the app. So as you see, the cost of acquisition that you would have spent in getting a new user, by day 30, we are literally losing out on that user, and only 2 users out of the 100 new users that you would have acquired are active users. The trend is a little better for shopping vertical, where we see around 20% of the users engaging with the app on day 1. By day 7, it drops to 11.5% for Android, but by day 30, the engagement rate has, the active user base is only 6%. Across all the verticals, we see that iOS is better performing as an OS compared to Android. However, the engagement rates are still sub 10%. For travel, for travel apps, the trend is similar to what we saw with gaming and communication, where by day 30, only 2.5% of the users that you have acquired are actually active users or even coming back to your app. So as you see, with these engagement rates, it's really tough out there. A lot of our app developers or a lot of our partners actually spend a lot of marketing spend is going on in acquiring these new users. However, the uninstall rate is almost as high as 28% within the first 7 days that we see, and 35% of this install rate comes from paid acquisition. These are some of the benchmarks that we have seen for uninstall rate across the market. So the trend is similar across different markets. It's not just India, but even in markets like US, UK, Germany, France, we see 30% and more of the apps getting uninstalled within the first 7 days of the app getting downloaded. One of the good things, however, is that mobile is actually one of the most measurable ecosystem that we have ever created. Unlike other channels like desktop, offline, etc., attribution and measurement on mobile is very advanced, and it is easy for us to actually determine ROI across different channels on mobile as compared to the other channels. I think if we go back in time, over the last 12 months, there was a first wave which came in the mobile app first world. There was a first wave which came, which was around getting new users and acquiring new users. And as more and more apps started getting developed across these verticals, a lot of the developers were focusing on acquiring new users. That wave actually lasted for around 6 months, where the key focus was to see the user base, whether the user base was more than 1 million, etc. Very soon, all our partners realized that acquiring new user is only half the battle won. What is more important is that if we can actually retain and engage with these users, because that's when we will actually get the true ROI of marketing. So the second wave came, where it was not about just getting an install, but it was getting engagement post-install. So once a user has installed the app, how many of those users are actually opening the app? How many of those 100 users that we acquire are actually making the first transaction or making a registration? So that was the second wave. Third wave, which we are seeing right now coming in, is basically where we start measuring, where we are moving from a CPI, which is cost per install world, to actually cost per transaction or cost per event world, where marketing spends are not being measured purely based on the cost to acquire a new user, but the cost to actually get an active user or a new customer. So as Shani already explained, mobile measurement plays a critical role in mobile CRM re-engagement journey. Let me actually walk you through how remarketing platforms like InMobi are partnering with mobile measurement partners like AppsFlyer in developing retention solutions. The first, as I think as Shani already mentioned, the first key point in the CRM journey is to be able to track real-time app activity for users across the entire funnel. With partners like AppsFlyer, now advertisers are able to track and pass real-time user activity to media sources like InMobi. For example, a gaming developer is able to track events like registration, level up, in-app purchase, and pass it back to media sources in real time whenever an in-app activity happens. Similarly, an e-commerce developer can actually measure the entire purchase funnel from install to app open to add to cart to purchase and send that information back to retargeting players for optimization and setting up re-engagement campaigns. Similarly, we see in entertainment across other verticals like entertainment, taxi share, different events can be configured and passed back for re-engagement. Now, what do we do? What do retargeting players like InMobi actually do with this data? Using this real-time information, InMobi actually has a dynamic audience builder which we can leverage to create user segments cohorts in real time. A lot of our partners, when we speak with them, a lot of them have different re-engagement goals. Some of them have re-engagement goals which says, I want to re-engage with my user cohort who have installed the app but not even opened the app in the first 7 days. Or I want to re-engage with users who have added some product to the cart but they have not yet converted. Or it can be as simple as I want to engage with users who are lapsed, who have not engaged with the app over the last 30 days. So with this real-time information which is being passed to InMobi through players like AppsFlyer, InMobi Dynamic Audience Builder can create real-time segments and user cohorts and retarget these users. The other key important aspect of using this information is how we can actually personalize each of the impression and each of the creative that we see, that we show to the user based on what the user has browsed or searched or even added to the cart. So our partners can, so the other important role is actually personalizing the creatives. Along with the real-time events, as Shani mentioned, you can also, advertisers can also share product information or rich data back with the Postback, which helps InMobi to actually pick up the right product and to show it to the user in real time whenever we see the user on our network. So let me actually walk through a quick case study on how InMobi and AppsFlyer together helped in scaling re-engagement goals for one of the leading e-commerce players in Indonesia. So the objective of the campaign was twofold. So our partner was actually struggling with activations, which basically mean they were running a user acquisition campaign. They were seeing good traction in acquiring new users. However, the activation rate or users who actually converted and made the first transaction was not very high for them, especially for the paid channel as compared to the organic one. So InMobi actually, so one of the key objectives of the re-engagement campaign that we set up was to re-engage with users who have installed the app but not made the first purchase within the first 7 days of installing the app. The second key objective of the campaign was to reactivate dormant users, So basically finding and re-engaging with users who have not opened the app for the last 30 days. So what was our solution? So through AppsFlyer, InMobi ingested real-time events, and these events included rich events like app open, PDP view, add to cart purchase, and along with these events, we were also getting information around what product did a user view, what was the GMV value of the product that the user viewed, which really helped us, which really helped InMobi product recommendation engine to find personalized products that we showed to the user in these two user cohorts. Also using InMobi Dynamic Audience Builder, we segmented these users in real time based on whether they fall into the cohort, which is basically users who have installed but not made the first purchase, or if they fell into the dormant user cohort. In terms of results, actually InMobi is currently one of the largest remarketing partners for that merchant. We were able to activate, we were able to drive up the activation rate for our partner, driving more than 500 first transactions daily at a cost per first transaction of around $2.5, which was really high, which delivered like good ROI for the campaign. Similarly, for the dormant user base, we were able to re-engage the users and get them back into the app and drive transactions through these users at $1.5 CPT. So this is one of the typical use case that we see in re-engagement, where we partner with AppsFlyer and the advertiser in re-engaging with the existing app user base. I think the last thing which I wanted to cover was how important attribution plays around the entire re-engagement journey. So attribution is an important in app first retention strategy. It is actually one of the biggest challenges that advertisers are facing in assessing the value of a marketing strategy. Traditionally, what we have seen is that a lot of these campaigns have taken last click attribution model as their strategy. However, more and more advertisers are moving towards view through attribution and multi-touch attribution for the retention strategy. It is extremely important for us to understand why this shift is being made from last click to view through to multi-touch to effectively measure and attribute ROI. I think few of the cons that we see in last click attribution strategy. The first is that there's a bias against the upper funnel tactics. When we try and track only the last click, we don't know how the customer was found or how many times did they interacted with a particular product or with the particular brand before converting. This could actually move the budget away from channels which are driving the customers to discover and engage with the brand. Similarly, because of last click, we don't see very well cross-channel tracking being taking place today, and a lot of times only the channel which drove the last click is getting attributed. Because of these reasons, we see more and more advertisers, more and more of our partners actually moving towards view through and multi-touch attribution, where some of the key advantages that we see is it not only focuses on bottom of the funnel, but it also focuses on upper and the middle funnel performance. We are able to see a cross-channel lift, which is basically saying, okay, what are the different channels which actually help the customer discover the different product or the brand, and how can we actually attribute the ROI to those channels also. And this effectively actually gives a real sense of ROI across the different marketing campaigns that we are running. So as we move forward in the retention, in a mobile first retention world, I'm sure we'll see attribution methodology also evolving a lot more and moving towards multi-touch. I think with this, I would like to end our webinar, and we'll open up the forum for any questions that you have. One of the questions that we have is the average benchmark for retargeting. What is the average benchmark for retargeting? $2.5 seem expensive. So this $2.5 actually is cost per first transaction. This is not cost per transaction, and this is for Indonesia market. So $2.5 cost per first transaction is actually for a user where literally we would have, that user is as good as a new user for us, because that user installed the app but didn't make the first transaction. So it's literally CAC, as we say, or cost of acquiring a new customer. So the benchmark that we usually see in markets like Indonesia is around anywhere between $3 to $5 for a cost per acquiring a new customer. In markets like India, we see the CAC to be anywhere between $2 to $3.5. Shani, there's a question around, do you think organic discovery can be fixed? Do you want to take this question?
Yeah. Okay, that's a great question. I think that organic discovery, I mean, in the past we've seen very high, what we call organic multipliers. So for every non-organic install, for every paid install, we expected to see a few organic installs. But I think, nowadays this is totally not the case. From our discussion with the advertisers, most of them see organic multiplier of about 0.2, 0.3, 0.5. So it's totally not what it used to be. I think that part of the problem is that the App Store is, like I said, completely flooded. Discovery is very hard. So you really have to, the way I see it, you have to use available tools. For example, Apple just came out with for iOS, Apple Search Ads, which is an attempt to help app discovery. There are the Google Play Ads as well. It's important that you have the ASO proper, and remember that even if the number of organic installs is not as high as it used to, you still need it to be ROI positive. There's just no way that you can be ROI positive only from non-organic installs. It's very, very hard. So you need those extra organic installs to be ROI positive. I think that organic discovery, with so many, so to summarize, with so many apps in the App Store, it's going to be very hard for apps that are not the top apps to be featured. But with some tools and with the proper measurement, I think app developers can get enough organic installs to ensure that their paid acquisition works.
There are, I think, multiple questions around AppsFlyer. So the one question is around, is there any reference available for incorporating rich in-app events, which will help the developer?
No, I mean we have a lot of our rich in-app events are predefined, so it's a lot easier to add them to the SDK. But there's not much of a difference between adding a standard in-app event and a rich in-app event to the SDK. Any other questions?
Yes, so there's one more around, we have an AppsFlyer account. Are Postbacks part of it? Is there additional cost for integrating these Postbacks with InMobi retention platform?
Okay, we will, this question is for more of a technical developer, so we will make sure to answer this question by email.
So, Shani, sorry, one more question is around what role does retention play in LTV measurement?
Yeah. Okay. So LTV is probably one of the most important things that app marketers have to do today nowadays to be successful. So I think that there are a few formulas or multiple formulas to look at LTV. Okay, I'm not going to talk about specific formulas, but in general, LTV factors in three main parameters. There's the revenue coming in, the monetization. This can come from in-app advertising, it can come from in-app purchases, it can come from subscriptions. There is the organic, how many organics users you can expect, and again, you need this to be ROI positive. And the third important key aspect of LTV measurement is retention. So the higher your retention, the better your LTV. I mean, retention, after all, is the basis of monetization. You cannot have users will not make purchases in your app, will not engage with your app in a meaningful way. When especially when we talk about bottom funnel events like purchasing, without continued ongoing usage. So optimizing retention is a key part of LTV measurement. Any other questions?
One of the questions is how can uninstall rate be improved? Actually,
Yeah.
even I can take this one. So one of the things that we have seen, particularly as we mentioned in the webinar, One of the key challenges that our advertisers are facing are the high uninstall rate, especially the high uninstall rate within the first 7 days. We are working with a bunch of our partners to reduce the uninstall rate by actually re-engaging with the user within the first 7 days of them installing the app. The chances of a user engaging and actually making either a first transaction or registration within the first 7 days, the LTV that we see actually increase. The LTV of that particular user cohort is actually far more compared to a user cohort with whom we have not re-engaged with the first 7 days. So either through push notification, email, or display re-engagement campaigns, I think within the first 7 days, it is extremely important to start reaching the users and nudging them to engage with the app and then improving the LTV over time. Shani, if you have anything to add to it.
No, I think that's, I mean, we just, last week we released a first uninstall study with data from iOS data from iOS was included for the first time. And yes, we definitely, we saw that uninstalls are very high across the globe. They're a fact of life. Users will always uninstall. I think it's important to understand that beyond, of course, using all the things that we've talked about to improve retention, to improve usage, to improve engagement, just to keep users happy and satisfied, it's important to set expectations. That means any way that you can set the expectations is going to reduce the uninstall rate. And this can happen, for example, by looking at the App Store. Okay, having your App Store page with a lot of information, not too much information, but information that's easy to digest, that's easy to understand, with a video, if possible, with a lot of visuals. So this really reduces any chance of surprise. Another thing that can be done is to use video advertising. So video advertising is like a preview. Okay, it's like a preview of the app. So if users watch a 15-second, 20-second video and understand what the app experience is all about, or what the gameplay is, if it's a game, then the chances of surprises are significantly reduced. So you just get users that have seen what they have liked what they've seen and have installed the app. And now, of course, you need to deliver a really great app to encourage continued usage.